Hamas is not the legitimate government that speaks for the Palestinians. Hamas is not the official military of Palestine. Hamas is considered by many Western nations and their allies as a terrorist organization. Israel has one of the most feared military in the world. Hamas is no match to Israel. But there's something I want you to listen, and I'll play you a report. Why did Hamas attack Israel with the strength that Israel already has, with the military might that Israel has? How and what made Hamas to carry out this attack on Israel, and who is supporting Hamas, and which angle will Hamas succeed or fails as far as this war between Hamas and Israel is concerned in Gaza? I want you to watch this very, very important analysis. This is a very important video, and I want you to share the video because this video should get to a lot of people to understand the Palestinian conflict and the Hamas conflict. There's a difference between the Palestinian struggle and the Hamas struggle. The Palestinians want two states with Israel right to exist. Hamas doesn't want a two-state. In fact, Hamas wants a different solution as far as the Israel-Palestinian situation is concerned.
At the break of dawn on the 7th of October 2023, Hamas operatives based in Gaza launched yet another war in a region that has seen more wars than any other in history. Using a massive barrage of thousands of rockets and using technology and aggressive tactics, they broke through the heavily protected border into Israel. They hit military targets. What stunned Israel and shocked the world was their attack against civilians in communities and at a music festival where thousands had gathered. The body count is still rising, but thousands were killed. Hamas took more than 150 people, both civilians and soldiers, hostage, including foreigners visiting Israel. Also, people of at least 36 nationalities are dead or missing. Hamas, locked in one of the world's most impoverished regions, has never hidden its militant intentions. But so far, it has also been careful enough never to overestimate its ability against one of the world's most feared militaries. Why did it attack now? The answer is a complex mix of history, geography, religion, people, power, and politics. We are here to simplify it for you. My name is Priyanka Sharma, and this is Gravitas Plus. For more than 1,000 years across Christian Europe, Jews have been persecuted for their alleged role in the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, the God and the prophet of Christianity. They were consigned to ghettos. In many European empires and countries, they were banned from owning property and faced discriminatory laws. They were economically marginalized and socially outcast. By the late 19th century, a lingering aspiration for a Jewish homeland in which a persecuted people could find security and safety began to grow into an effective political movement. The Jewish leaders identified their old habitat with their holy city of Jerusalem as the epicenter, as the new promised land. The stretch of land located between Lebanon, Syria, Transjordan, and Egypt. This was once home to the kingdom of ancient Israel and the kingdom of Judah. It was a land from which they had been often driven out and often returned. Their history includes the memory of Jewish people enslaved by the pharaohs of Egypt and their return under the leadership of Moses. Jews were first driven out from the kingdom of Israel around 732 BC by the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Then from the kingdom of Judah during the Babylonian captivity in 597 BC. The Roman Empire was their next overlord. In 66 CE, the Judean population rebelled against the Roman Empire, a brave uprising that was crushed with unsentimental ferocity by the Romans, culminating in the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE. In 132 CE, there was the Bar Kokhba revolt. Simon Bar Kokhba was a Jewish military leader. Under him, the Jews of Judea rebelled against the Roman Empire. The fighting went on for 4 years, at the end of which the Jews were forbidden access to Jerusalem. The Romans renamed the region Syria Palestina. The Jewish people spread across a wide diaspora, unable to find their center of political gravity. The rise of Arab empires brought the region under the rule of Damascus and Baghdad. For a while, Christian crusaders conquered Jerusalem under the Arabs. Under Saladin, restored their own rule. In 1516, the Ottoman Turks occupied Palestine. During this long period, the land was peopled by those described logically as Palestinians, most of whom had become Muslim, but not all. There were strong Christian populations in Palestine. Cut to the late 19th century, the presence of Palestinians did not diminish the dream of a Jewish state. the Zionist movement was launched. Jews began lobbying Western powers to facilitate a mass emigration of Jews to Palestine. The Russian Empire was the largest home for the Jewish diaspora. In 1905, after the failure of the first Russian Revolution against the Tsars, many Jews from Eastern Europe and Russia began moving to Palestine. Then, under Ottoman rule, the settlers used Hebrew as their spoken language. The Ottomans, defeated by the British-French-Italian alliance in the First World War, collapsed in 1918. The region was occupied by Britain and France under a secret wartime arrangement devised by two officials, Sykes and Picot, in 1916. Britain took over Palestine. Britain owed a debt to Jewish leaders who had helped during the First World War, particularly in finance. In 1917, then British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour wrote to Lionel Walter Rothschild. He was one of the most prominent leaders of the British Jewish community, in which he promised the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. It is also said that the British government will facilitate the achievement of this object. This became known as the Balfour Declaration. The French had their own reasons for facilitating the creation of a Jewish homeland. In 1799, Napoleon had issued a proclamation. He offered Palestine as a homeland for Jews under France's protection. Napoleon wanted Jewish help in his invasion of Egypt. The Jewish state did not materialize under France. The British-French agreement on a potential Jewish homeland remained a promise between the two world wars of the 20th century. But the idea kept gathering momentum. The Muslim and Christian Arabs, who obviously would be displaced from a territory that they had inhabited for centuries, opposed the Balfour Declaration. The British could not totally ignore them, for they had helped the British against the Ottomans in the First World War as well. So the British limited Jewish immigration, trying to appease both sides. By the 1930s, Arabs and Jewish settlers had begun fighting openly in Palestine. The tragedy of Jews and Judaism reached an unbelievable apotheosis during the Second World War, when the German Nazis under Hitler designed a horrific, unimaginable plan to kill every Jew in their domain in what is now known as the Holocaust. Jews were sent to concentration camps where they were enslaved, starved, and gassed to death. It was beyond belief that human beings could sink to such depraved barbarism. At the end of the Second World War, the urge to create a homeland for Jews acquired a moral momentum when Jewish settlers discovered that the British were still reluctant to leave from Jerusalem. They attacked the British soldiers and authorities. The matter went to the newly created United Nations. In 1947, the year India got independence, the UN voted to partition Palestine. The United Nations adopted the resolution 181. According to it, there was to be an Arab state and a separate Jewish state. Palestinians rejected the resolution. They mainly pointed two things. One, Jews were allotted nearly 56% of Palestine, despite making up just 33% of the population in Palestine. Two, Jews were being allocated the fertile coastal region. Until then, Jews owned 6% of the Palestinian land. This UN map changed the reality. Soon, Jews began occupying the land designated to them. The Palestinians fought, but without much success. By May 1948, Jews were in control of all of the land promised to them, also some Arab territories. On the 14th of May 1948, Israel became a country. It was the first Jewish state in 2,000 years. At its helm was Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion. Tel Aviv's airport is now named after him. Palestinians lament the creation of Israel as the Nakba, or catastrophe, that resulted in their dispossession. This was the start of endless fighting. A day after the creation of Israel, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq invaded Israel. The first Arab-Israeli war broke out. The Israelis fought off the Arabs. It also seized key territories. In 1949, the UN brokered ceasefires. Israel was given permanent control of these territories. More than 700,000 Palestinians left Israel, and Israel became a Jewish majority country. In 1956, focus shifted to this water body in particular. The Suez Canal. It is vital to trade as it connects the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea. In 1956, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal. In response, Israel invaded Egypt. Britain and France followed. US and Soviet Union brokered a peace deal. But peace was short-lived. In June of 1967, Israel carried out preemptive strikes on Egyptian and Syrian air forces. This sparked a six-day war. At the end of it, Israel captured the Sinai Peninsula and the Gaza Strip from Egypt. From Jordan, it took the West Bank and East Jerusalem. and Golan Heights from Syria. The Israel-Palestine conflict took center stage in the 1972 Munich Olympic attack. Extremists from the Black September group raided an Olympic Village dorm. They killed 2 Israeli athletes, took 9 others hostage, all of whom died eventually. In 1973, Syria and Egypt launched a surprise 2-front war. It was Yom Kippur Day. The Arab forces gained ground in a victory which Egypt celebrates as historic. It recovered the whole of Sinai. America intervened to stop the war and lay the framework for an accord between the principal nations, Egypt and Israel. In 1978, Egypt and Syria signed the Camp David Accords. This led to the 1979 Egypt-Israel peace treaty, but all the while the question of Palestinian self-determination remained unresolved. In 1987, Palestinians living in the West Bank and Gaza Strip rose up against the Israeli government. It was the first intifada. Intifada meaning shaking off. In 1993, Oslo I Accords were signed between Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO, the negotiator, that is Mahmoud Abbas. It was the first direct Palestinian-Israeli peace agreement, and it set up a framework for the Palestinian self-governance in West Bank and Gaza. Israeli and Palestinian leadership recognize each other for the first time. This is then Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and this is the leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization, Yasser Arafat. See them shaking hands? This handshake got them the Nobel Peace Prize. But peace still evaded the region. In 1995, the Oslo II Accords were signed. It mandated Israeli withdrawal from 6 cities and 450 towns in West Bank. Israel withdrew its troops from Gaza in 2005. Cut to present. The West Bank and the Gaza Strip constitute the state of Palestine. West Bank is home to 3 million Palestinians and more than 500,000 Jews. Israel administrators the West Bank except East Jerusalem. The Palestinian National Authority governs the Palestinian pockets. This is Gaza. It is a narrow 25-mile stretch of land. It is home to over 2 million Palestinians. The Gaza Strip is one of the world's most densely populated regions. It is under Israeli blockade since 2007. Gaza is under the control of Hamas. The group was founded in 1987. It won the election in 2006. Western governments have branded Hamas a terrorist organization. Hamas orchestrated what is being called a Pearl Harbor moment in West Asia. Israel is calling it its own 9/11, one that has killed the most number of Jews since the Holocaust. There is no black and white in this conflict. Both Israelis and Palestinians see the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea as their own. This land is sacred to Christians too. Israelis cite the Balfour Declaration as Israel's right to exist. The Palestinians regard it as the start of their dispossession. Here is something one often forgets about this declaration. It also mentioned that it was quote-unquote clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. The Balfour Declaration was signed in 1917, but between 1915 and 1916, a set of 10 letters were exchanged between the British and Mecca's Amir. These letters, known as the McMahon-Hussein correspondence, speak about the idea of an independent Arab state. Is this conflict a British legacy? Something to think about. Here's something else. Why does a sustainable solution evade the region? Despite years of diplomacy, issues remain. Number one, the two-state solution. Hamas rejects it. Israel says a Palestinian state must be demilitarized. Number two, Jerusalem. Palestinians want East Jerusalem to be the capital of their state. Israel says Jerusalem should remain its eternal capital. 3. Refugees. Before this war, more than 5.6 million Palestinian refugees were living in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, or in camps in Gaza and West Bank. Palestinians demand that the refugees be allowed to return to where their families lived before the 1948 war. Israel says any resettlement of Palestinian refugees must be outside its border. Almost every global power has picked a side in this conflict, and no one has been able to broker peace. This is the biggest war in West Asia in 50 years, and it stands to change the strategic landscape of the region beyond recognition.